And we're live. Welcome, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I've got my oopsies. We've got a little bit of a feedback issue going on. I got my fuzzy drink here. It's evening where I am, and I'm super excited as usual. I love doing block hacks, and it's we have another great, amazing chat for you. I'm particularly super excited about this one. CBDCs. It's central bank digital currencies are a hot topic right now. We've got China doing experimentation. We got talks in the Canadian government, the U.S. government, the IMF is getting involved. It's crazy out there, and we have an expert on the subject, Marc Lijour. And he's here to give us a great presentation. I'm going to unmute him, and hopefully we don't get a crazy feedback again, but let's see. How are you doing, Marc?
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, we do have a bit of a feedback. If possible, do you have headphones?
Yeah, I can look for headphones.
How do we sound now?
I can hear you now.
Perfect. I think we're good. We're all fixed. We fixed it live. Awesome. So welcome, Marc. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. I'm super excited about this topic. As more folks are trickling into the room, I like to get to know our presenters a little bit better, ask you a few questions, have a little bit of a conversation. So I've been asking our presenters, what was their aha moment, and when did they notice blockchain or Bitcoin had value, and why did you get involved in this space?
Well, I was having I'm hearing myself, which is a little bit weird, but okay, that's better. No, not so quick. But I'm gonna try to focus. So I was always interested by computer science, and when I came to Canada in the early 2000s, I went back to school. So I was following the computer science story pretty closely. I'm a big open source enthusiast also, so been on the Linux space before the 2000s. So I was reading, the usual articles on Slashdot in particular. That was before Reddit. And I was following this Bitcoin thing, or digital cash before Bitcoin, very closely. And I was busy with computer science course load, but I was being fascinated in watching this space closely.
Very cool. So you said you followed Dot/. Was that one of the cypherpunk mailing lists? Or
Slashdot? I think people would know Reddit these days. So same ideas,
right.
forums with a lot of conversations, up and down kind of things, very controversial and opinionated contributions on the chat.
Perfect. I think we're getting into a little bit of a controversial topic and talking about CBDCs and in contradiction to cryptocurrencies, and I think we're going to dig into a little bit of that topic today. So that's super exciting. I also know that you have a strong education background, and I saw that you worked specifically for the Ontario e-learning strategy. And as we know, with the lockdowns and things and schools being closed, that e-learning is a huge part of education these days. So can you speak to what your time was like working on that, and any kind of your thoughts in that area?
Yeah, for sure. I love school. I love school so much. I became an educator. I taught math and computer science over the years. I was lucky enough to get a job at the Ministry of Education in Ontario at the time when the e-learning strategy was about to get started. I came early into 2006, so there was a pre-pilot in 2005 before. But 2006, we launched the first initiatives with the online courses and Ontario Educational Resource Bank and the communities from there. So it's fascinating to push this agenda. We had to be innovator, operate a little bit like a startup at the beginning and really pitch it hard. Being all in the team very convinced that this is going to be the future. And today it looks like the future actually accelerated a big deal. So we're right there. Today is the future.
Yeah, it's very interesting how a lot of industries or a lot of products work that way. In the beginning, you're like, this is what we need this right now, and it's like a fight to get the funding, and then all of a sudden something in the world changes, and now they're like, oh, now I'm sure they're just throwing money into this area. And I think it's like that with a lot of industries, potentially blockchain being one of them. A lot of folks we've been here for a long time saying like, we need this. And slowly but surely we're getting there. And now we're talking today about countries, nation states are introducing central bank digital currencies. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. I'm super excited. So before we jump into the chat, I want to bring everybody's attention down to the bottom of the screen. We have an Ask a Question button. And so if during the talk you have any questions for Marc, please drop it in there. If you see a question there that you really want to get answered, give it an upvote so we get that to the top of the list. And just beside the Ask a Question button, we also have some polls going on. And I'm going to check in on these polls. Let's see here if we get any answers coming in. As you guys are coming in, let's see your answers here. I want to know when you think Canada will have a CBDC, whether you think it's going to be in a year, 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years, or if it's never going to happen. I'm seeing some answers come in here. So far, within 5 years is winning. So far, 5 years is winning. And I wanted to know who you think would have a CBDC earlier, the US or Canada. So far, we got Canada in the lead. I also am interested whether folks are designers, developers, or entrepreneurs. We got a whole mixture so far. A little bit more entrepreneurs, some not. So a lot of developers, and 50-50 split on designers. We'll take a look on these polls again towards the end of the chat. But without any further delay, I want to introduce to you Marc Lijour. He's a vice president at Information Communications Technology Council, ICTC for short, which is a national center of expertise on the digital economy and one of our partners for BlockHack. Marc started his career as an educator teaching mathematics and information technology. He played a leading role in the Ontario Ministry of Education during the revision of the technological education curriculum in 2009 and the launch of the Ontario e-learning strategy. In recent years, Marc opened for the top IT companies. Marc worked for the top IT companies such as Cisco Systems, Savoir-faire Linux, and ConsenSys, before launching his own consulting practice focusing on blockchain and the financial sector. For the last 15 years, he worked closely with startups in a variety of roles to create exponential business value. Marc is passionate about new technologies and, much more importantly, about helping people and organizations generate value using innovative tools. So I'd like you all to help me in welcoming, with a nice digital round of applause, Marc Lijour, as he takes over the cast.
Well, thanks so much again for having me. And I'm excited by this topic of central bank digital currencies. It's actually well on track. Canada has been exploring the topic for a long time. Some say as early as 2014. And we have, and we'll talk about more, of course, ahead in the deck. But we have actually a private CBDC a little bit in the form of QCAD. So we have a Kenyan dollar, totally digitized. So check that out, QCAD. So let's get started with the slide now.
Is that live today, Marc? QCAD?
Sorry?
Is QCAD live today?
Oh, yeah.
I heard about it, but I didn't think it was an actual thing. Maybe we can talk about it towards the end with the Q&A, but that's news to me. That's awesome to hear.
Absolutely. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep, looking good.
Okay, terrific. Okay, so I'm going to start with a little plan. And if you don't mind, I'm going to disconnect myself from the sound because I don't want to hear myself all the time. So just wave at me.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk to you about the Central Bank Digital Currencies today. Central Bank Digital Currencies, as the name indicates, are sovereign currencies like the Canadian dollars, like the US dollars, that are managed by central banks. So we have, how cash is today. So it's a virtual version of that cash. There's been a lot of progress. So 3 questions we're going to address in this talk. What's happening? So give you the highlights. Does it matter? And why does it matter? Why should we pay attention? Why is that a topic that is worth of our time and our conversation, and particularly right now? And the third one is, since it's a hackathon, how do we engage as a developer, as a designer, as a business person? What's the connection point? How do you get into that train? I should preface by saying that it's really an introduction to central bank digital currencies. The topic is fast moving and we take like a lot of time to go through all the details, but I'm expecting to cover the main points and the main things that you should know about, and give you a couple of tips to learn more from them. But first of all, a few words about ICTC to get out of the way, in case you're wondering what this logo here is on the top left. ICTC is a 25 years organization, 25-year-old organization. It's a not-for-profit, Canadian-based, and we are a center of expertise for the digital economy. ICTC does a continuum of services from research. So probably heard about Akshay talking about one of our research on the blockchain ecosystem in Canada and abroad earlier today or earlier this week. And we are doing a lot of programs. We're doing programs to help kids at school learn about cybersecurity or to get consider careers in IT. We're helping students in university get a learning experience, and we have wage subsidies for employers up to 75% of the wages. We're working with Microsoft, we're working with different companies to really advance the digital economy in Canada, both for individuals and for companies. In blockchain, we do programs. For example, we've been helping George Brown to develop their program and ultimately to create a special stream that I started this September to go through to dedicate to focus on the financial services industry. And that's because we're seeing a lot of demand from employers in the financial services industry to hire people with blockchain credentials, business analysts, developers, all kind of qualified talent. We're seeing that there is an increase there, so we are really supporting colleges like George Brown and other organizations that want to develop their program. And here you have a little quote of one of our participants. So we're helping the college develop a little bit of the curriculum. We're helping survey the labor market, and we're also working with the participants to give them a little of a soft skill introduction to tech careers. And another thing I'm very proud of doing is that we're going to launch a digital school, some kind of Bootcamp 2.0. So if you're interested in a career and learning about software engineering, about data science, about DevOps, we get you into a bootcamp fully online, fully digitized. No need to go into a location. Everything's happening online. Everything you do in there is like you're a programmer, and you're doing things like using the Git repo, submitting things, answering problems, interacting with your peers. 99% of the work in the platform is very similar to what developers do. So that was the shameless plug. So let's go to the topic now. So what's happening in this field, in financial services, in blockchain technology? The most interesting thing, in my opinion, frankly, the thing that really drives my interest is this topic of central bank digital currencies. And you heard during the introduction that I'm very interested in systemic changes. That's why I worked at the Ministry of Education to influence millions of people at once. And I'm interested in the adoption of technology and what it takes for organizations and groups to really transform, right? You don't inject technology and suddenly transform. It takes years for the customers to really understand, to employers to really to really propose some value that is interesting, for the iPad to appear, for the app economy to build, for Uber to happen. So there's a sequence to all of these things, and that's what's fascinates me, systemic changes. So when we look at central bank digital currencies, we write in there, it's really what's happening is the future of cash. So cash is something that we know as money. Back in the days, in the thousands of years, like in the precedent millenary, we know that China had, it's probably maybe the first location in the world that has something like banknotes. And then in the Western world, it became more in use in Holland, the Netherlands, and Great Britain with the company, the Indian companies. So it's basically about merchants going on the seas and needed to carry some some value and having notes. But before that, money was basically coins, often crafted with metal, precious metals like gold and silver, and stamped by the sovereign. But today, what we know about cash is probably a banknote, or it's probably some kind of coin. And as you have seen over the last 10 or 20 years, there is an increased use of digital banking, an increased use, for example, credit cards. And in some countries, for them, especially Northern European countries, people have said for many years they're not carrying banknotes or anything like that in their wallet anymore. So they're really using their credit card or their iPhone, and they tap and they pay and they go. So there has been some kind of virtualization of cash, but really a drastic event and a very important change of paradigm, and can be traced to the connections with blockchain technology. And the pivotal moment of that was in 2019 when Facebook announced the Libra initiative. So on the right side, you have a number of partners that are there today, as of today, to do the screenshot. But during the announcement, you had many other partners that were in there, like MasterCard and some very, very big financial organizations that pulled from there since then. But as of today, you still have Lyft and Uber. You still have Andreessen Horowitz, which is a key venture capitalist firm that was there at the beginning of the internet. And you have Coinbase, that you guys might know if you're in the blockchain space. And you have the Creative Destruction Lab, which you might know if you're a Toronto-based person. Creative Destruction Lab is a very well-known accelerator hosted at the University of Toronto, of big fame. So lots of great things happening there. And they are running a stream for blockchain startups for a year or so. So we just wanted to give them a shout out. But you have also Shopify, which is the Canadian unicorn and the company that everybody is looking at now, that Norton and BlackBerry are things of the past. Now everybody's look at companies like Shopify as the Canadian trailblazers. So it's very interesting to see all those companies here as part of the partners of Libra. So what is Libra? Well, first of all, it's an initiative created by Facebook, and that's really what explains the shockwave and what we're going to be talking about next in the next slide. But Libra, to say very simply, is, as they say, I copied everything is from the website, right? It's an initiative to establish a global payment system that is designed to be inclusive. When they say to empower billions of people, that's Facebook saying, I want to reach out to the people that are the unbanked, and maybe the only thing they have is a little phone connected to the internet, but maybe they don't have a bank. And it's been in line of initiatives created by Facebook to reach out to people wherever they are on the planet. And now beyond social media and access to internet, what Facebook is proposing through Libra is a payment system that will work at the level of the planet. So a couple of important advantages or benefits. It's cross-border payment has been known to be both slow and extremely expensive. You're gonna find the resources, by the way, when they say these little numbers there. It's if you go to the Libra.org and to watch the video there, you're gonna get the page with all their resources. So they say in average it costs 7% to send money internationally, but if you read the World Bank and you stay on top of the World Bank, the cost a few years ago was pretty much double. And I've seen in some countries the cost to be almost 30%. So when you send money to some companies like a Western Union type of company, when you want to send money to your family because you work in Canada and you want to feed your wife and your kids abroad, that's the tax you have to pay those companies to send your money there. So obviously, it's a high tax, it's a high cost for workers, especially when they don't have a high salary and they work at the minimum wage here. And it's also Facebook. It's also a way to reach the 2 billion people that are unbanked. That has been a long-term goal and hope, dream that the blockchain technology, in particular Bitcoin, would be solving that problem. Now, so Facebook has took the initiative in there, but in all fairness, it's not Facebook's money. They took one step back and they aimed to create a little group that would be a little less, Facebook-centric, a little more open, a little more acceptable to the world. Nonetheless, it remained fairly a private money that stands up as a competitor to sovereign currencies, such as the US dollar, the renminbi, or the euro. And that really scared the hell out of the government in the world. So you saw an immediate reaction. The Bank of China came up saying that they've been working on the project for a long time. They were almost ready to go. In Europe, you had, I'm French, so the French, it appears to me that the French Minister of the Economy at the time was one of the first one to have a very, very strong reaction against Facebook, against Libra, and went very vocal very soon. The EU took a little bit of a more quiet reaction, but definitive reaction against the private money that would compete with the euro. And you had, in Canada, you can see the language also used by the deputy governor of the Bank of Canada. So if Libra succeeds, then okay, we're gonna have to have it to respond to Libra out there. So if we sum up, really what's happening is private companies, as it's not unusual, want to disrupt the status quo. They propose a solution, and suddenly government reacts and tries to figure it out what that means for them, how they would that would eventually erode their controls, and sometimes for legitimate reasons, like for example, in terms of fiscal policy, having a currency they control through the central bank is critical for the state. So they have reasons to worry, and they did worry a lot. And so the positive point coming out of this is that every country, or not every country, I should say, a lot of countries. The last time I was reading, it was about 70 countries in the world. That's about 30% of the countries on the planet are known to be working on some type of proof of concept or some type of work at different degrees of advancement that involves central bank digital currencies. It also became an official topic of conversation. So if you look at the World Economic Forum and their work, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with the Davos conference, where everybody goes in the Alps, in the Swiss Alps, and have this cozy week of conversations between country leaders and industry captains when they decide the fate of the world. The central bank digital currencies became the topic in 2020 for this year. And they even issued some interesting reports and some policy and toolkits that provide some kind of guidance for countries to advance with these things. So some of those, so taken right out of their policy toolkit, some interesting definitions and classifications and frameworks that are fairly interesting. One of which is the different approaches a country can take to release, to implement some kind of central bank digital currency. One model is the direct issuance. That means that suddenly every citizen has an account at the central bank. Right now, obviously, it's not the case. The current system is the central bank has the reserve, usually backed by some kind of gold, and then they send the money to the banks, and the banks is where you and I, as individuals and even companies, we have accounts in those banks. We don't have accounts directly with the central bank. With the central bank digital currencies and technology, abilities to scale, certain CBDCs could have us have direct account with the central bank. Well, there are many advantages to that. One advantage is that think about the COVID-19 check. If the government wanted to send you money, they would just activate, a script and send and just credit everybody's account in the country by X dollar, and that would happen in a split second, and everybody would have that money right away. Right now, it's how complicated it is to go through the banks, sending checks at home. It's extremely complex. So we'd bring a little amount of fairness there, because right now, not necessarily, not everybody get the same access to cash. So by having everybody in the central bank an account, it would solve some of these problems in terms of time and also fairness of access. And you could still have a two-tier insurance system, like a wholesale system, where that mirrors what's happening now. So the central bank would deliver some currencies to intermediaries, such as banks, for example, and these intermediaries could deliver the money to us, basically the way it works right now. And you could have any kind of hybrid model, of course, that would work around those lines. One critical aspect as to which system to which country, I think the consensus now is to say that if you have a small country, direct insurance is maybe the best way, faster route, and maybe easy enough to manage if for a small country. But for a large country, for example, looking at China there, it's their approach has been a two-tier insurance model, where they picked a couple large organizations to scale it down, to do the last mile, which kind of makes sense due to the complexity of the country. So why does it matter? So let's keep up about, why are we talking about this today? So let's start maybe with the most surprising and maybe controversial. The Bank of Canada, the governor of the Bank of Canada was giving a couple of interviews, and I think, and then suddenly became discreet after that interview, where he mentioned that a CBDC in Canada would be wonderful, because then suddenly you could share that information, like a full set of ledger information, with the police and the tax authorities. So that's, depending how you feel, sounds like increased security, sounds like a lot of convenience to do your taxes. Maybe your taxes are automated for you. You don't have to do your taxes anymore. So that sounds great. On the other hand, of course, if someone has something to hide, but probably wouldn't like that. But on a more philosophical ground, you might not think that's a good idea to have too much information centralized in the same place, and that maybe you want a little balance of power in government to make sure that democracy works. So that's an interesting and very controversial discussion we need to have about the model of CBDC we want for our countries, and what would fit a democratic country. On countries that are more authoritarian, they tend to actually advance a little faster on implementing those technologies, because there is less resistance and less discussions. And certainly having everybody on the same account or close, being able to monitor what everybody does, is very interesting. But for democratic countries, I'm still looking for very heavy, well-balanced, well-informed debates, how that would work. Now, for some of us that have been in the blockchain space for a while, that may be also a surprising development. When Bitcoin has passed the 10-year-old mark, and many of us have looked at Bitcoin and some similar cryptocurrencies, and thinking Ethereum and others, to maybe a counterbalance to the traditional financial system that arguably we could say has many failure. If you think at the banking crisis, the prime mortgage rate, the crisis of 2007, the crisis of 2011, and also the weird things that some central banks have been doing, like the Fed in the US, that have been pumping money on the system for years, for the last number of years. So many of us have been thinking, well, the government intervention and really taking over central banks, or the collusion of central banks with government, the executive branch of government, is raising questions about what would it be doing to the value of money, to potential debasement of the money. Debasement means how money or currency fares against other currencies in other countries. It raises a lot of questions about the fairness of those policies, and as to who's benefiting the most in our society when some money is pumped from the central bank down to who. And oftentimes it goes to the stock market. If we're looking at those COVID times, it goes to the bond market. It goes to, some people say in some countries, it goes to the stock market. And it doesn't go that much directly, at least, to our purse as individuals. So it raises a lot of questions there. And the other thing that are a little bit questionable is if you go along those lines of the centralization of power in government with central bank is about what could happen with interest rates. The interest rates across the world, looking at Japan, looking at Europe, they are in negative territory, so which is kind of odd and creates a very bizarre world of how our economics work. When you have negative interest rates from your bank or for the central bank, that is cash that's like a hot potato. You cannot hold that cash, because when you hold that cash, it's basically auto self-destructing all the time. It's melting down. So it's an incentive for banks when they receive these money from the central banks, an incentive for them to drive it down to their customer and to issue loans and basically to issue more liquidity to the system. But some people have been asking, like, okay, but what if interest rates actually hit the end user in the chain? So they're hitting the central bank, they're hitting the bank, but what if we start to experience negative interest rates in our bank accounts? And that's not really possible to achieve. But if we had the programmable money, and if we had a CBDC, some people argue that it could be a risk, where the government could come up with a policy and say, well, look, you have $1 million in your bank account or $1,000 in your bank account. And by the way, I'm going to put a time bomb on it. If you don't use it by the end of the year, it's going to devaluate and it's going to lose value, to incentivize you in order to spend that money. So for now, it's just a scenario, but it's an important scenario to consider as to what would be the implications of having an automated and programmable type of money to regiment an entire aspect of our life. And traceable transactions, we talked about that. Now, if you compare CBDCs, the way the central banks are thinking about it, which they think about it as an extension of cash with the same rules, so they can track you, they can decide interests, policies, of course, the fiscal policy, which they need to own control, versus a blockchain, a public blockchain such as Bitcoin, where the idea is it's a self-sustained network, and the value is created by the actors. There's no intervention and no cheating. A lot of people in the blockchain community say, well, if you change the policy, it's like manipulating the policy to the interest of someone. Who is that someone? It's a big question mark. So you don't want that. And it's also decentralized. And then blockchain is not totally anonymous, at least it's pseudo-anonymous. But now, if you have, there's new technology and specialized blockchains or Zcash and Zk rollups and this kind of technology that seem to be the reaction today for public blockchain. It's about actually hiding, and bringing some privacy into who's spending what to when, and allowing people a certain right to privacy. So there is a departure from what the central banks are trying to do, obviously, and what the blockchain, the public blockchain, public internet is trying to be doing. It's important to understand. So obviously, behind all of that, there are a lot of drivers. So first driver we talked about is Libra entering the system and saying, well, we're going to rule this. We're going to have the global money, and you guys, with the renminbi, the US dollars, the euro, and your currency, doesn't really matter. You become a slave to our bigger global currencies, and all the big decisions are going to happen elsewhere. So obviously, central banks, we've seen, they don't want that. Countries don't want that. Sovereignty, in order to establish a fiscal policy, is a critical driver. And if you look at, for example, what's happening in Europe with the euro is a very interesting experiment, where a country, whether it's Germany or France or Italy or any country that is living with the euro and using the euro, they lost the control on their own money, And that has very funny effects where some countries seem to be richer because they're, let's say, they're all the value, the power of their economy compared to the value of their money, while the money is lower as they have a competitive advantage. Thinking about Germany, where the mark was really high, and some other countries seem to be in defavor. She seems to be punished by this system. I'm thinking about Greece, for example, where they're really at the bottom of the basket and really hard for them to climb up because the price of the euro compared to their economy is really high. So there's a lot of conversations inside Europe already about should we break the euro or should we keep the euro together? Would be some kind of mechanism to compensate countries. So 20 years after the launch of the euro, these conversations are not resolved yet, and it's part of the political agenda. So now when we take that to the global level, and you're thinking about, okay, how these countries in the world would fare if we had some kind of CBDC and some kind of a lot of questions on that path. The other big topic is the hegemony of the US dollar. I mean, if you look today after 1945 and the Bretton Woods Agreement, the US dollar is still the most used currency in the world for many reasons. One of the main reasons is it's a very deep currency, meaning that if you want to move billions of dollars at once without moving the market, then you have to use the US dollar. The market cap is really high for the US dollar. It's another way to say it. However, the US dollar has strings attached. The US of America, so the country, has certain laws that allow them to act in other countries and to fine and to constrain and to do all kind of punitive actions against people that do things they don't like, as long as they use the US dollar. So they have used some laws for the early 70s and more recently to punish bribery and basically fine companies, and then curiously that had the resulting effect of breaking down those companies. So European companies are good examples. I'm thinking Alstom, for example, in France is a good example. So the US state is imposing a lot of hefty fines on those foreign companies because they did something illegal that the US think is illegal down to their, according to their own laws, and maybe not illegal in other countries, but it's illegal to their own laws. And suddenly they have jurisdiction because the transactions were made in US dollars. So that could be very problematic for a country that wants to maintain control and protect their own economy and their own country companies. Obviously, would be a huge incentive for a country to try to lower the use of the US dollar. And you can see, that the euro maybe is one of the reasons why the euro has been proposed and adopted to counterbalance the US dollar, which certainly didn't happen as much as many wanted. And it's also another reason why great countries like China are probably pushing their own countries for their own currency to sustain the Belt Road Initiative, the local economy in their regions, and so certainly entitled to get rid of a foreign country that's foreign to their foreign country currency. Then you have COVID-19, you have the rise of the divide between the rich and the poor. I talked a little bit about that. And the political unrest. If we see the election of Trump 4 years ago in the US, the rise of extreme rights also in Europe. Some in France again, the yellow jacket. A lot of people manifesting, protesting in the street because of the divide between rich and poor. It's definitely something we have to consider. So how to engage as a developer? So there are there were very early projects that are still continuing, and Canada has been leading in the global scene. So some people said that I don't know if you guys remember the cat coin, for example, but it was very early. So some people mark the first projects in Canada as 2014. But look, 2016, you have these Project Jasper launch, and in the Jasper projects we have different phases. I think we have completed probably phase 3 by now. That involves all the major Canadian banks and actors there. Started with R3 Corda, which is a consortium. R3 is a consortium of banks that has grown over time, and Corda has been developed by banks for the banks as a blockchain technology. So Jasper project, that's home. That's what's happening in Canada. Another very interesting one is the one in the Monetary Authority of Singapore. So in phase 1, which they started in 2016, they started to look at tokenized currency. And they worked also with R3. So at the time, 2016, it was not a lot of options. But you can see the partner here with Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Credit Suisse, JP Morgan is there. So kind of major players. And they continue with further phases. In phase 2, for example, they did parallel experiments, one with R3 Corda, one with Ethereum, and I think another one with Hyperledger. So they're really experimenting really hard, looking at all their options and look what works best for them. So there was a lot of learning. And of course, the people banks of China. China is big enough and advanced enough that there's been a lot of progress made. And even though it's not, fully transparent, the People Bank of China has been communicating for a couple years. Post Libra, they're communicating a little more. And as of this month, and the report they did at Cybos recently, they claim to have operational this thing in operation, if not at least in some kind of a beta stage, with 3 million transactions, or that are worth over 1 billion yen, and that's about 100,000 personal wallets, which is kind of a surprise because I thought they would go through a wholesale approach, for what I understood. So that's a surprise. And they managed to reward 5,000 workers in Shenzhen with some rewards. So people that have worked in medical and for the COVID-19 response, and they're on track to use this money through to the Winter Olympics. So I think that's probably the biggest target where we're going to see what it looks like, and will be open to the world, where everyone will be able to participate and have a direct experience, hopefully, with this currency. So use cases. So what is that used for? So used for a number of things. So there's been some kind of exploratory path in all of this. One is the tokenization of currency. So Project Ubin is the one in Singapore, but you've seen the ConsenSys did a project in the Philippines also to tokenize the peso there. This is kind of the first step. Can we put cash on the blockchain, and then can we move this cash in the blockchain? So can we make payments? Can we simplify the process? Can we shorten the time of payment? That's the main thing. And then it moved to RTGS. So RTGS means real-time gross settlement. And it's the process that our banks are using to to clear and settle the money. So, for example, if I'm sending you some money to give you a gift, let's say $50 Canadian. I'm at Royal Bank. You might be at TD Bank. I'll send you that money. You get it in your bank account. You're happy. But then suddenly, TD Bank has $50 from Royal Bank. So Royal Bank and TD Bank, they need to talk and say, well, at the end of the day, Marc sent this guy $50. Now we need to make sure we clear those accounts and we send the money. We are even, right? So real-time gross settlement is the idea that bank can do that real time. And the idea also that maybe they don't need a clearinghouse in the middle. Maybe they can do that directly by using blockchain technology. So it's a peer-to-peer interbank settlement of operations. Right? So Project Ubin, that's phase 2, and ConsenSys did something similar in South Africa with Project Coca in 2018. And there is an 80-page long report explaining how they use Ethereum to do that, using Peterson commitments and using some kind of privacy mechanisms. And there is questions of optimizing Ethereum so that they could do the amount of settlement they needed. So they could clear the full day of transaction in 2 hours. So there was within specs. And then we have more sophistications as they go. So lately, the big conversations has been about delivery versus payment. And there, the idea of delivery, when you have a Bitcoin on the blockchain or any kind of cryptocurrency, when you send that cryptocurrency, there is a finality of the transaction. So it's sent, now the other person owns it, and there is no question about it. You don't own it anymore. You cannot bring it back. It's moved already. So the delivery happens as the payment. So that's the DVP. So brings operational efficiency, reduce settlement risk, because now that the money has been sent, it's final. There is no risk that somebody comes back and reverse the transaction. The big thing is cross-border payment. This is very expensive and very ugly for banks to happen. And eventually, one network, multiple currencies, but we're going into a global systems where there could be exchange between different countries, and that's where it becomes very threatening for governments again as to what's happening to their currency versus another country currency. So that's probably going to be the big complicated things to do. And blockchain technology that I've seen in all these projects, and so the list is not exhaustive, is what has been surfacing. So Libra and Calibra, and by the way, all those technologies are open source, so they are there for you guys to look at and gain some kind of mastery, so you can participate in some way. So it's open source. We can learn from the code, and there's a lot of also learning materials out there. So Libra, Calibra, they're both on GitHub. R3 Corda, mentioned a couple of times. Ethereum, the Société Générale, one of the big banks in France, has done 2 experiments on public Ethereum. So that's interesting. One this year, one last year. But Quorum has been used internally, for example, with South Africa. Stellar has been doing some experience with the Central Bank of Ukraine. Tezos is being also considered in quite a bit recently. And I mentioned QCAD in Canada as well. And I think I'm going to stop there because there's only 5 minutes left. So I want to make sure we have a little time for at least 1 or 2 questions. Thanks for your attention.
Yeah, I'm going to leave the your last slide up there for a little while longer if people want to copy down your contact information. But yeah, let's dive into some questions here. I know there were some great ones. This one's been upvoted, so let's see here. I think this might be a bit more of an opinion question because I know you're not a central banker yourself, but they want to know, do central bankers see Bitcoin and other cryptos as a threat, or do they see CBDCs and cryptos existing alongside of each other?
what they see, I think it's pretty clear they see it as a big threat, and I think they're jealous. They're seeing Bitcoin and say, "Wow, that's great. Why don't we have this ID?" And they're trying to learn from it and basically imitating, but using their own rules. So I don't think it's gonna work very as planned, as simple as that. But what's going to happen, I think, down the road is probably going to have a mix. When you see there is a new technology like ebooks, well, you have ebooks today and paper books. I mean, people still use one or the other. So I think it's going to be more options rather than just one taking over.
Very interesting answer. Yeah, I think that battle is going to continue to play out. I'm going to remove your slides now so we can come up to full screen. But yeah, I think like it's very similar right now to how cash moves around, right? It's like hard to track, and it was as good as we could get at a certain point, and now we're kind of transcending beyond that, and there are concerns involved. But I think we will progressively find answers to it. But where the dust settles is probably anybody's guess at this point.
Yeah, certainly not giving any investment advice.
Yeah, exactly. The longer you spend in the blockchain space, the more you'll hear that. And it's normally followed by an opinion, but never suggesting that you do this for you. These are personal opinions, and you do you, I do me, and we all live happily. Let's see some more questions.
I will share my slide deck.
Yeah. It's I believe you said it's a PDF, so we're gonna find a way to get it out to you folks. For sure, we will post it in our Discord. So that bring your attention to just below the video here. For people on mobile, it might be a little bit another place, but if you see the BlockHack Global Resource Hub, we'll probably get it up there. That's where our portal is. So all our connections you can find there. Links to the GitHub and tons of educational resources are up there as well. Okay, I see a bunch of questions coming in. To help me sort through these folks and upvote your favorite questions down there. Let's see here. Given the rule.
I'm dropping the link for QCAD, so make it easier for folks to learn about it.
Awesome. Yeah, I was gonna ask you that personally, but yeah, if we don't have time, then I'll check out that link. Here's a question here. CBDCs are completely traceable. They're backed by central bank. So what are criminals going to use? Every criminal will have Zcash or Monero, or like I don't know if we want to start giving criminals advice at this point, but what would somebody use if they don't want to be traced? Let's frame it that way, I guess.
Yeah, it's like all of us. I mean, you have big criminals and small criminals that are falling on the tax. So you still have gold, you still have all solid concrete things you can exchange. But also, I mean, don't worry about the big criminals, because they know about the paradise states and all these things. They have their own accountants, so don't worry about them too much. I think there will also be some more invention on the blockchain, maybe some new public blockchains that will come up. I mean, it's just the beginning, right? It's the sky is the limit from there.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Okay, what do we got here? Yeah, you mentioned that there were at one time 30% of countries reported to be working on CBDCs. Do you want to mention some of those countries? Somebody who's asking a question here, and do you think it's only a matter of time before it's 100% that have come out and been like, yeah, we've been working on this, and here it is, by the way?
Yeah, it was fairly occult, Eden, and suddenly this year with Davos and a lot of people that came up, sharing what they've been doing, And there is other reports by consulting firms such as PwC or Deloitte. There's some good reports out there. I cannot remember when I saw these 70 countries. So that's about 30%. That's about a third of the countries are currently working on something, as far as I read. So in Europe, you have a lot of movement. So many countries in Europe, and the Central Bank of Europe is involved. You have the Philippines, I mentioned, South Africa, China. The US has been slow, but they have this US dollar initiative now. And Ukraine also is I've seen it very, very active. And you guys, if you look now in YouTube, and there's an increasing number of conferences also that are being recorded there. You're going to find some new people working on that all the time.
Very cool. I know we're coming up on an hour. Do you have time for a couple more questions?
Sure.
Yeah? Okay. I want to toss one out there. I know you mentioned it briefly about the IMF coming out and saying like this is a new Bretton Woods moment. For those that might not know, what was Bretton Woods and what do they mean by this? It being a new Bretton Woods moment. What's happening right now?
Well, it's been a progressive process, but since the let's say the end of the 1800s, the U.S. dollar has been gaining ground progressively. After the Second World War, it didn't escape to anyone that the U.S. Basically, ended up the big winners of all of this. And they managed to make the US dollar the big anchor for pretty much all the currencies in the world. And they benefited a lot from that because their money never goes down. And it is it's a privilege. And it's been helping them a lot. But since then, especially the Nixon years, the 70s, when they decoupled the US dollar from gold and they keep doing funny things to the US dollar, it erodes a little bit the US dollar. However, the US dollar is still 80%, I think 80% plus of all the transactions in the world for what I've heard. So it's not going anywhere, but the US is definitely taking advantage of that. If you look at the printing press going on with the Fed and how much US dollars they created in recent years, would make your head spin.
Right. So does a Bretton Woods moment mean like kind of changing what the world reserve currency is looking like? Is that what that's referring to?
Yeah, but Bretton Woods is actually a place. So people congregated and they make some decisions in Bretton Woods. The US dollar was really the main currency for the world international payments. So now, when we get to Libra and the reaction and the discussion now with these, the World Bank and the IMF and all these countries, like if we were to come to a point where all the countries sit down and agree on some kind of system, then that would definitely be another Bretton Woods 2.0. I'm not sure it happened, but there are signals that people are talking.
I see. I understand now. Very, very cool. One last question I wanted to ask you is like about Libra. When you showed that slide and you mentioned some of the folks that were in there originally, we had traditional competitors like Visa and MasterCard. We have Lyft and Uber on there. What is the value proposition for these folks to be partnering in direct opposition to each other? Like, what do you think the thinking is behind that?
Well, the Libra is the money. Visa, MasterCards are the payment rails, right? So if there is any money that pop up, obviously they want to be able to move that more money around. That's a business for them. Mm-hmm. When you look at Libra and Facebook, what does that mean? That means maybe that will have an ability to buy and sell through your Facebook account or your Instagram account. Would that mean that the bank suddenly is out of the loop? Would you do banking through Instagram, or there's so many things that could happen from there. If you think, Apple, Google, 20 years after where they are, could Facebook become the bank for everyone? So that's extremely scary, a scary proposition, especially if you look at what's happening in China, right? It's kind of already happening, and Facebook's probably looking at this and say, well, I'd like to do the same in the Western world.
Yeah, that's it's a very exciting and at the same time terrifying time for all those reasons that you just mentioned. Do we want to put so much power over a monetary system in the hands of the likes of Facebook or any other kind of large corporations like that? Or is there a better way to do it? Do we want to trust the central banks to manage that sort of thing? Or are there other more self-sovereign options? These are questions that we're pondering now.
Yeah, I think if that leads to maybe a good summary conclusion in the form of a question. Who should be in charge of cash?
Yeah. That's amazing. That's a nice little bow that we can put on this conversation. I really appreciated you coming out today and sharing your presentation. And for sure, we're gonna put it up for folks to go over, check out all those links that you have in there. It was really enlightening. There's tons of questions that unfortunately we won't be able to get to, but thanks everybody for tuning in. I want to take a look at the polls here. How did we line up on the polls? When do folks think that Canada will have a CBDC? 9% say within a year, 36% within 2 years, 36% within 5 years. We have 18% saying it's going to be 10 years, but nobody believes that we will never have it. So that's very interesting. At some point, we're going to get it, at least according to our audience. Who's going to have a CBDC first? 78% think Canada. There might be some Americans in here think USA is going to beat us to the punch. We'll see about that. And our audience, we have a lot of entrepreneurs in here. We have a great number of developers in here as opposed to not. And a split between designers and not designers. That's very, very interesting. I love seeing the great divides amongst the audience that we have, but we're all coming together around a similar topic. We're all interested in blockchain. We're all interested in CBDCs today. And so again, thank you very much, Marc, for coming out and chatting with us. I want to also remind folks that it's still not too late to sign up for BlockHack. If you check out the link just below the video, we'll take you to the resource hub and guide you through the rest of the path, getting to our Discord, signing up for Hackathon. And once you get in the Discord, we're there to catch you and support you as you build your business ideas out. So again, everybody, thank you for coming in. We are back again tomorrow with another set of workshops and talks. So until then, I'll see you in the Discord, and I will see you tomorrow for the next workshop. Take care, everybody. Bye, Marc.
Take care, everyone. Enjoy BlockHack.